explore the answer to this question. How can I streamline the admissions funnel at my school? And before we do that, let's ask this question, why? Why is it worth the effort to streamline or optimize the way families come to learn about our school and eventually attend our school? Well, the benefits are numerous. Namely, we can participate in the admissions process with less effort, less time, or if we already have enough students applying to our school, then we could do this with less effort. So let's look at this idea of the admissions funnel and try to reap some of the benefits. So when we talk about a funnel, here's a literal funnel, big at the top, small at the bottom, and this is a common metaphor used in marketing simply because we're going to progress from families who are completely unaware of our school to, we hope, families who are attending our school. So we can characterize this as a funnel with a larger opening at the top here, and there are many unaware families around our city. And then as we move down to the bottom, then not all of them are mission appropriate for our school, not all of them would fit, but then we have families who are attending and have become part of our school community. So as we think about this metaphor of the funnel, we can see there are several stages. These can be defined in a number of different ways, but let's use this model of unaware, families that are completely unaware of the school, all the way to families who are attending our school. And we could even add a step. Not only do we want families to attend, but we would like the students to return year after year. So maybe there's an aspect of them returning on an ongoing basis. So we go from somebody who's completely unaware to someone who's returning. This is the funnel. Sometimes people have funny names for these. You could say this is the top of the funnel, or tofu, top of the funnel, and then there's the middle of the funnel, which would be mofu, and I guess the bottom of the funnel. So there are different phases of the funnel that we can begin to think about. But I think it's important for us to realize that it's not just each stage that we're looking at optimizing, it is the transition between stages. Namely, how do we move a family or a student from being completely unaware of our school to becoming aware of our school? And then from there, how do we move to get them to inquire or express an interest in our school? Then how do they apply? How do they enroll? Once they're enrolled, then what's needed for them to attend? So we're actually looking at the transitions from phase to phase more than we are the individual phases themselves. So let's take a closer look at the individual phases as we move down the funnel. So here are the phases of the funnel broken out, and we can see that we have aware to unaware and so forth, all the way down from attending to returning. So as we step through each of these, let's consider ways that we could streamline or optimize each transition from one state to the next. Now, forgive me for using a metaphor in addition to the funnel, but in a sense this is sort of like dating, because as you're developing a relationship with students and families, you're trying to move from someone being completely unaware to having a close relationship, and we might characterize this first phase as just getting noticed. We want someone to notice us or know that we exist, know that we're an option, and that we're interested. So this first phase could be characterized as external marketing, and this takes on a lot of different forms, and there are many different options. So this can include word of mouth, where someone is just telling someone else. That's sort of like setting up someone on a blind date. There may be communities of faith at your church or your place of worship where families are getting together and spreading the good word about your school. Then we get into social media, search engine optimization, various print ads, online ads, direct mail. There may even be events that you're able to attend to promote your school, such as networking with area preschools that feed into your school, or maybe even showcases, or maybe you even create events yourself or with an association of schools that you're able to use to get the word out about your school. So external marketing is the term that we can use to characterize this awareness campaign. But importantly, once someone is aware of your school, then what is the next step? So how do we get them to register interest and inquire about your school? And so using this dating relationship metaphor, let's call that getting the first date. We want to begin to interact with a family in a meaningful way and have them get to know us and us to get to know them. So what's the best way to do that? Well, there are a number of ways that schools try to do this. And if we go out and we look at various school websites, I did a quick survey, we see that there are lots of options. One might be an open house, where we're going to invite families to come to our campus and we'll have a presentation. That could also be a tour. Then there are lots of other options where someone might say, go ahead and just apply. Here's the link to apply to our school. I think many schools have that on their website. Or there might be a contact form saying contact us, or there could be a phone number, or maybe an email address saying reach out to us, we're here, someone from the admissions office will get back to you. One website I looked at said an admissions representative will contact you. So I need you to fill out this form, and then that's the way it proceeds from there. So there are a lot of options that schools employ to effectively move to the inquiry stage, but a couple of observations here. Some schools have an application directly on their website, which effectively is getting rid of this step and having families go from the awareness phase to the applied phase. So I believe that that's short-circuiting it, and just as if we look at the next step, the applied phase is analogous to starting dating or making a deeper commitment. As soon as we get noticed by someone, we don't immediately ask, would you like to date? Would you like to enter into a relationship to see if we get along? The large jump between awareness and application is, I think, too big for some families to make. So let's begin to look at these individually. When we think about some of the challenges of this step, what I observe about these different calls to action, if you will, the ways that we're asking someone to do something to inquire about our school, is that these are quite varied. These are wildly inconsistent, from send us an email to come to an open house to go ahead and fill out an application. And many schools will have all of these present on their website, but these are wildly inconsistent, and these are tantamount to, hi, how are you doing, versus do you want to start dating? So those are at the opposite ends of the spectrum. Also, these can vary based on the time of year. If it's the fall and in your city you have an admissions season that begins in the fall and maybe ends before December, then maybe you have open houses and tours that occur during a couple months of the year, but during the rest of the year, it's completely different, or you just direct families to apply directly, and so there's some inconsistency based on the time of year. So one way to think about these different activities would be to consider this matrix of low clarity activities versus high clarity activities, and high effort versus low effort. So if you're starting a relationship with a family and trying to attract them to your school, then I think one way to think about that is that the initial event or the initial contact should be something that is high clarity and low effort. Somebody wants to know what's going to happen, they don't want ambiguity, and they don't want to expend a tremendous amount of energy, because if this doesn't work out, then they've wasted time and effort. So this actually applies in the dating scenario too, that if I'm just getting to know someone, I'm not necessarily going to want to schedule a 6-hour date with them where we're doing many, many different things. That would be very high effort, even though it might be high clarity. It just takes too much time and effort. Instead, I might like to do something like coffee or lunch, or an initial first date that is very clear as to where it is, what's going to happen, and it doesn't require much effort. So, extending that metaphor back to schools, what are high clarity, low effort activities that schools can participate in that could attract families and cause them to make the next step towards an inquiry? So, I think open houses are a good choice and do exist within this. So to attend an open house requires maybe an hour or two of time, and it is very clear what goes on in an open house. So let's put open house. Open house is a high clarity activity. You can describe on your website exactly what's going to happen. Maybe there's a tour combined. That is a high clarity activity. It does require some effort. Maybe an email newsletter is extremely high clarity. Every month we'll send you a newsletter with updates about our school. And that maybe requires even less effort. They're just clicking to do that. So that could be an easy high clarity, low effort activity to initially engage with a family. Now, we contrast that with some of the other things that schools are doing. If you say, call us, well, that is kind of low effort, but it's rather ambiguous as to what's going to happen when I call. Are you going to expect to talk on the phone with me for 30 minutes? Are you going to call me back? When are you going to call me back? I can't talk at work. So there's a lot of ambiguity as to what's going to happen on that phone call. And phone calls, some people enjoy talking on the phone these days. Maybe some people like less talking on the phone. So I would say maybe a phone call is not quite as easy as clicking on an app or on the web, but it requires some effort, but it's definitely low clarity. So similarly, if you say email us, maybe that's less effort, but it's equally ambiguous, because what am I supposed to say? Do I fill out a form or say, contact me? This would be analogous to someone on the first date saying, I don't know, I don't have a plan. What do you want to do? So if you just say email us at the school, you're not asking the parents to take a specific next step other than just contact you for some ambiguous reason. So I think that uncertainty is less favorable than having an event where you can define precisely what's going to happen on your next interaction. So similarly, a school tour is rather high effort. It might be high clarity, but it's getting up into the higher effort area because now we're moving around the school. Or even a shadow day is quite high effort if my student has to take a day off from their other school to shadow a student. But I've even seen schools where, as part of the initial interaction on the website, they're asking what days would be good for a shadow day. So that's really like jumping from, hi, how are you, to, do you want to start dating steady, in all in one jump. So you're by jumping right to a shadow day, you're really going from awareness all the way down to something very close to the application. So this quadrant of high clarity, low effort activities, I think, should be the focus of this sequence from moving from awareness to inquiry. So what could be some other good things that fit into this quadrant? Well, just as coffee might make a good first date, what about a weekly or monthly coffee with the head of school? So for 45 minutes or an hour, there could be a short presentation. There could be the admissions staff there, the head of school there. They're clearly communicating the school's points of differentiation. They're clearly articulating the exciting things going on at the school, and so that's a very consistent way to expose prospective families to your school. Or what about a video tour? What about a video that's low effort to consume, and it's very clear because I've watched videos before and now I'm going to learn something about this school? I mentioned newsletter sign up, or if there was some sort of an ebook or something that they could request, maybe how to choose a private school in our city, and you could explain the different options and the different alternatives and why your school is a great choice. So that might be something that's high clarity, low effort, and allows you to begin the dialogue with these families. I've also seen a school have weekly office hours, so that's maybe a variation on the coffee theme, but the head of school has a weekly time when they're available to answer questions or to welcome families and to show them around a school. This was a smaller school, so that worked well for them, but the consistency of that was, I think, very appealing to prospective families. So that's some thoughts on moving from awareness to inquiry. Then we look at moving from an inquiry to application. Now you're talking about getting deeper in the relationship. You're asking for extensive information from the family. How can we streamline this? Well, what do schools do when it comes to having their application online? Many schools lay out the entire application process. In fact, I saw one where they were trying to be quite helpful, but they explained that you would need to submit an application, the fee, report cards, test scores, recommendations, your birth certificate, your records release forms, and if you're transferring, you need a student transfer form. So this is more information than I need for my tax return, and they're laying all this out on one page. Well, why is there a need to go into all of that detail if someone gets halfway through the application and they don't want to continue, or that intimidates them and they never apply? Why not just have not only the first date, but focus on maybe the second date by having a simplified, streamlined application, and then once they've applied, they can move to the next step related to test scores or recommendations or submitting additional materials. So the application should definitely be online. It should be mobile friendly, accessible via phone or tablet. It should have a save and resume feature such that someone could stop the work on the application and resume later, and it should require no information other than that which is actually needed for making an admissions decision. So one website I went to required me to create a login with a user ID and password, which is inconvenient. And then on the next screen, I was asked to submit my birth date as a parent. So I'm not exactly sure what my birth date has to do with my child's application to a school, but they were asking for all this even before the application had begun. So these are providing roadblocks to receiving the application from a prospective family. So that can be streamlined, and you can reduce the friction, reduce the resistance to that initial application by removing everything except for what is absolutely necessary. So then, if we move to someone who's applied and been accepted, now you want them to enroll. So this is analogous perhaps to getting engaged. You're making a specific commitment to attend on a specific day, and this could be deemed yield management. You want to have a high yield from the number of students that are accepted to the number of students that enroll. Do you have a path? Do you have a process for welcoming in accepted students? Maybe that's an acceptance packet. Maybe that's a day in which you welcome the accepted students onto campus. So I know that universities have done this very well for years, so this is something that could certainly be done with primary and secondary schools. So then once the students have enrolled, then you want to get them to attend. Now, again, in all likelihood, someone who is enrolled has attended, but that is certainly not always the case. So are there ways that you're communicating and building the anticipation to the first day of school for those enrolled students so that you ensure that everyone who's enrolled does indeed attend? And then, as this final step, on an ongoing basis, you want families who are attending to keep attending. And this is analogous perhaps to staying married. It requires effort, and you have to put time and attention into a relationship, but we could call this internal marketing. So contrasted with external marketing at the very top step, then there's this aspect of internal marketing of how do you continue to convey to current families and students the value of your school and what they would be missing if they were to leave prior to graduating. So we've seen from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel specific ways that we can think about these transitions and ways to analyze what's happening in each area, getting rid of any waste, getting rid of any extra steps, and making sure it's streamlined. So some takeaways would be to have a clear, focused call to action in your marketing materials. As you're asking for this first date, don't make it too broad or too ambiguous. Get very specific. Try to make that consistent throughout the school year if at all possible. And that might mean considering rolling admissions, because that would make your admissions process consistent from month to month. So if someone applies in November or someone applies in March, it's fundamentally the same process. That may not be possible with your systems, but that would be something to consider. Then once someone is interested in applying, you want to remove all impediments to applying. And you may want to consider more group meetings or in-person meetings that get people excited about the school and encourage them to apply. So there are steps and ideas. We haven't spent as much time on these last items, assuming that once someone has been accepted and enrolled, that they're attending and returning, but there are additional processes that you can develop around the bottom of the funnel also. So with that said, we have explored the question of what or how can I streamline the admissions funnel at my school, and we've highlighted several specific ideas related to each step along the way of the funnel.